Oh yeah, that's Voula.
So greetings and welcome everyone. At the beginning of the session, it's very important that we adjust our motivation. The best will be if we could be influenced by bodhicitta. If we cannot do this, at least influenced by renunciation. And again, if we cannot do this, at the very minimum, we should make sure that our motivation is something that goes beyond this life, not just this life. If we engage the activity with any of these three motivations, then it becomes Dharma. So let's not waste any more time. Please make sure you adjust your motivation. And we, as an aid for that, we will recite Refuge, Bodhicitta, and Gandek Lagema. Okay, we continue from where we left off. We are talking about correctly assuming consciousness, so correct assumption for short. Correct assumption is a type of mind that does not realize its object. So the majority of the text agrees in this, and this is the presentation that we follow, that correct assumption does not realize its object. However, there are some texts in which you will find the presentation that correct assumption realizes its object. They are the minority. This is not the presentation that we follow here. Okay, so for us, correct assumption is a mind that does not realize its object. But if we look at the word itself, assumption here, correct assumption, it means that this particular type of awareness has gone through some thinking process and has made a decision. All right, so let's look first of all at the definition. So we have given you a definition from Jetsun Losantayan's awareness, consciousness, and awareness. And their correct assumption, the definition of correct assumption is given as a non-prime cognizer that newly determines its own true object one-pointedly. Actually, this is a type of definition that eliminates so many things. Okay, so let's break it apart. It talks about its own true object. So its object is a true object. By saying it is a true object, actually it is saying that it is an existing object. And by saying this, it eliminates the possibility that correct assumption is mistaken awareness. All right. In terms of mistaken awareness, we have two types of mistaken awareness, conceptual and non-conceptual. All right. So to give you an example, the thing with wrong awareness is that its own object does not exist. So, for example, when you have awareness apprehending the blue snow in the mountain, this is wrong awareness because blue snow does not exist. When you have awareness apprehending the horns of the rabbit, again, this is wrong awareness because this object, the horns of the rabbit, do not exist. When you have awareness that is apprehending the permanence, thinking that sound is permanent, again, its object does not exist. You can have awareness that apprehends a circle when you actually have, let's say, dry straw, and you put it, you set it at light and you swirl it around, so you apprehend a whole circle. So there's no circle there. That again, it's a case of wrong awareness. So first of all, this definition is talking about whatever it does in relation to its own true object. It says that correct assumption does not have a common locus with wrong awareness. It eliminates wrong awareness. The other part of the definition says that whatever it does to its object, it does it one-pointedly. One-pointedly here is a phrase that eliminates doubt, because doubt always seems to be going between 2 points. Yes, no, maybe, I'm not sure, maybe like this, maybe like that. So it doesn't have that going backwards and forwards that doubt has, is one-pointed. Okay, another part of the definition says that it is a determining awareness. It determines. And actually, this indicates that it is conceptual mind, conceptual type of awareness. So it eliminates non-conceptual types of awareness. It also says that it is a non-prime cognizer. So obviously, it eliminates any prime cognizer. It says that it newly determines. So the word newly here, the fact that it is new, eliminates subsequent awareness. So as you can see, this is a definition that eliminates quite a lot of things. So it has told you it is not this, it is not that, it is not the other. It has eliminated many things. But let's see what correct assumption actually is. Okay, so we're talking here about correct assumption. So keep in your mind, correct assumption is a type of consciousness that thinks and decides and says it is this or it is in this way by relying on having understood the meaning of words. So something has been said, you understand the meaning of what has been said, and you decide that this is the case. So, for example, we'll go to the teachings, and our teachers tell us that sound is impermanent. Okay, so from our side, we take that on board. And we decide, yes, sound is impermanent. From our side, we don't have the realization that sound is impermanent. Therefore, we don't have the certainty that sound is impermanent. But having understood those words, the meaning of these words, we say, okay, sound is impermanent. So, you know how we have the three types of wisdom, wisdom arising from listening, wisdom arising from reflection, wisdom arising from meditation. When we talk about correct assumption, mostly this falls into the first category, this wisdom arisen through hearing. There are some scholars who say that in the case of wisdom arising from reflection, you can have a correct assumption there. Most people say you do not have correct assumption there. And Geshe says, I think that most probably you don't have correct assumption in the case of wisdom arisen from reflection. When we come to wisdom arisen from meditation, it is clear that we don't have any correct assumption there. So why do we say this? Why do we make this differentiation? You know how we talk about the four immeasurables, like immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, and so forth. So it is said that the four immeasurables are not correct assumption. And then it is said the four immeasurables are realizations or minds that do not come from listening, but they arise through meditation. So if it is something that has arisen through meditation and does not arise through listening, and because it has arisen through meditation, it is not correct assumption, I think we can clearly say that in the case of wisdom arisen from meditation, we don't have correct assumption. Okay, so what happens? Let's look at the sequence of events. How do we progress from one type of wisdom to the first? First of all, as we say, we go and we listen to some teachings. So we rely upon the meaning of these words. We hear the words, we understand the meaning, and then we go home and we think about it. Okay, so the initial, let's say, initial assumptions that we make come through listening. And at this point, it is assumption. But if you take it to another point where now you continue reflecting, so you have more and more familiarity, you gain certainty. And when you gain certainty, you have wisdom arisen from reflection. And then if you take that certainty, and again, you familiarize yourself more and more and more through meditation, then you have wisdom arisen from meditation. So you can see it's only really on the first level where we take in the information, but we haven't found the certainty ourselves. We haven't analyzed it. We haven't developed great familiarity with that yet. All right, so now if we classify the different types of correct assumption, we see that we have three types. The first one is correct assumption without any reason. The second one is correct assumption without ascertaining the reason. And the third one is correct assumption depending on a pseudo reason. So something that appears to be a correct reason, but actually it's not the reason. Okay. So the first one, correct assumption without a reason. Okay, I just believe that sound is impermanent. I have decided sound is impermanent. I have no reason. I have not thought about it. I just decided to say, from now on, I'm going to say sound is impermanent. So I don't have a reason. Okay. The second one, correct assumption without ascertaining the reason. Okay. Here I'm saying sound is impermanent because it is a product. So I am giving some sort of a reason, but actually I have not really understood that, or I have not realized, and I don't have certainty that sound is a product, and that if something is a product, it must be impermanent. So I have not understood the three modes of the presence of the predicate in the subject, the forward privation, and the reverse privation. All right, so I haven't really understood this, but at least I have some sort of footing there, but I haven't understood the reason. Okay, the third one, correct assumption, depending on a pseudo reasoning. So I'm saying sound is impermanent because it is an object of knowledge. So I'm giving you a reason here, but this does not become the reason. That's not the correct reason establishing this.
No.
Okay, those of you who are following the text, if you go on page 98 of the book, we will see just a slightly definition, a presentation that gives us a bit more information. So similarly, Sakya Pandita's Treasury of Reasoning says, correctly assuming consciousness are not more than three, not depending on a sign, being only an assertion, it can turn into doubt, depending on a correct sign or depending on a facsimile of a sign. Also posited as a definition of correct assuming consciousness is a determinative knower which, without depending on either experience or correct signs, which is its basis, apprehends one-pointedly and non-mistakenly its object of engagement, but does not get at an object with respect to which superimpositions have been eliminated. Okay, so here in this definition, in this additional definition, we have some more information. So it says correctly assuming consciousness is a type of determinative knower which comes without depending on any type of experience. So, or a sign. Okay, so let's look at the different types of experience. We have three types of experiences. Experience arisen from meditation, experience of the self-knower, and clear experience that is free from a generic image. So it says here, correct assumption is something that has to be, that does not come from any of these, does not rely on experience. So remember that thing we said before, that when we're dealing with wisdom derived from meditation, we do not classify any type of correct assumption in that category. This type of definition here actually makes us think that there are different types of mind that actually do not fit in this sevenfold classification. So if we keep reading further, it says here experience should be taken as referring to its not depending on any of the three. Experience arisen from meditation, experience of self-knowing, or clear experience, which is not mixed with meaning generality. If the definition is posited in this way, I think that whichever is an awareness would not necessarily be one of the seven awareness. This is because a meditative stabilization on ugliness or great compassion in the continuum of a learner, etc., those included within realizations in the scope of method, so bodhicitta and so forth, are not suitable to be correctly assuming consciousnesses as they depend on experience arisen from meditation, and are not suitable to be wrong consciousnesses as they are not affected by the causes of error, and it is easy to understand how they are not the others. I think this, and it should be examined. So by giving the examples here of certain types of meditative stabilization, so meditation on ugliness, or all those aspects of method, bodhicitta, great compassion, and so forth, in the mind stream of the learner, they are not correct assumption. They don't have error. They don't rely on any, they don't fit any of those definitions. So we understand we have minds that don't fit in any of those seven. Okay, so it's very interesting because we see this passage here concludes by saying, I think this, and it should be examined. So it should be examined. It's interesting that he says that because already an examination, the author has done quite thorough examination, and he has said it's not this, it's not that, it cannot be this because of that. So the examination has already taken place, and if you want the result of this examination is very clear, and it has been stated. So although the author says it should be examined, in a sense there's nothing more to examine. Examination has already taken place. Now there is another issue with correct assumption, and that is that some say that the term correct assumption, the terminology correct assumption, is not something that is accepted by the middle way consequence school. All right. The truth is that in the great classical texts, the Indian classical texts, we do not have the term for correct assumption. However, the meaning of correct assumption comes up many times. So there's not a specific term, but you can find a phrase that describes correct assumption. As for those who say that the consequent school does not accept the term or does not use the term correct assumption, this is not true. Definitely, we find it in the consequent school tantras, the tantras that are followed, such as, for example, Nagarim Chenmo, the great exposition of tantric stages, and other tantric texts. And also it is found in statements that talk about emptiness. They talk about individual who has not found yet the valid awareness with relation to emptiness. However, it is tending and has made the assumption that this must be the case. So definitely there are texts in which we find the term assumption, correct assumption.
Oda iju digestive bache mare iju digestive bache ta nalamanye musum jeba Geshe iju nalamanye reta nalamanye seginte gade jili shago sun tsi tela samdang baina rangi juyu du jube rangzen sewa nangyang tela nyeba jemi nube los 어디 다 나라만 예별로 칭인 바로와 랑이 주유제 주유도 주베 랑젠스도 호랑 유유디제 코 무슨 임베 인상가래 세월만 무요르다 이내야 호랑이 예바지다 세메 예바지를 했으나 예바니 두고요 말에 세메 예바만이 가서 유마도 별로고 어디래다 어디 소리노.
Okay, so that's enough for correct assuming awareness. And let's go into the next category, which is awareness to which the object appears but is not ascertained. This is on page 99. At the bottom of page 99, we have the definition of an awareness to which the object appears but is not ascertained is a knower to which the specifically characterized phenomenon which is its object of engagement clearly appears, but which is unable to induce ascertainment with respect to it. So with this type of awareness, the object appears, so we don't have a problem with the object appearing. However, this type of awareness cannot have certainty with respect to the object. And if you cannot induce certainty with respect to your object, it means you do not realize the object. All right, so on page 103, you can find the classification so when awareness to which objects appear but are not ascertained as divided, there are three: sense, mental, and self-knowing direct perceivers, which are awareness to which an object appears but are not ascertained. So let's have an example of the first one, which is sense direct perceiver, to which the object appears but is not ascertained. So let's say we have an individual who has gone into, I don't know, the circus or some big spectacle, and there is something really fascinating happening, and the person is really paying attention to a particular form, maybe the body of a person, someone is performing, or, someone is very beautiful. So they are just paying attention to the form. At the same time, there is a sound happening, right? But because their attention is directed towards the form, they're not really paying attention to the sound. And as a result of that, later on, although there's nothing wrong with their hearing, right? Later on, they cannot really remember the sound. If someone was talking, they cannot remember what that person was saying, and so forth. To give you another example, everyday example, when you walk down the street, you pass many objects. So, for example, there could be many stones and pebbles by the side of the street. They're there. We see them. It's not that we are blind. We see them. However, later on, we cannot remember the shape and the size and the color of each one of those individual stones. So they're a case of sense direct perceiver to which the object appears, but it's not ascertained.
Dadi imba de namre la kundu chaksamje dunye lanyan zimengang chakbe shinge nyamjir niga lanyan tsodi yus namre zawa de la kundu yorada nala manye imbe ko kundi cheza nala manye be kung tugu yorade dinde shung de kashe gyan de nala manye be kung dangba de jigmare singe dinde yungu yore.
Okay, so actually if we want to look at the scriptural source where we have where we can say we have mention of this type of awareness to which the object appears but is not ascertained. This is in Pramanavartika, because there is exactly this example. The person who is strongly attached to the form and therefore later on has no ascertainment in terms of the sound. There is debate about this. There are some people who say this is not really the origin or the source where we find this type of awareness mentioned, but we will not go into the debate. Okay, let's go and give an example of the second, which is a mental direct perceiver, to which awareness to which an object appears but is not ascertained. So an example of that is a mental direct perceiver apprehending a form or a sound or odor and so forth in the continuum of an ordinary being. Because we have said that this appears for a very short period of time, and therefore it's a case of something that appears to your mental direct perceiver, but it's not ascertained. So it's a case of awareness where the object appears, but it's not ascertained. If we want to give an example of the third, the self-knowing direct perceiver, which are awareness to which an object appears but it's not ascertained, you can give the self-knower of that mental direct perceiver, because that mental direct perceiver apprehending, let's say, form or sound and so forth, because the object appears for such a short time, the mental direct perceiver becomes a type of awareness to which the object appears but is not ascertained, and therefore the self-knower that experiences that also becomes awareness to which the object appears but is not ascertained. Okay, all right, so let's look at another example. Let's look at sense direct perception apprehending blue. We know that the first moment of that is prime awareness. The second moment of that is subsequent awareness. The question is this type of awareness, direct perception apprehending blue, is this awareness to which the object appears but is not ascertained? There are some who say it is. So when they say it is, we can ask them, why do you say this? They say, okay, because it fulfills the two parts of the main criteria. First of all, it has to be awareness to which the object appears. And that is obvious that it appears because we are talking about direct perception. If you have direct perception, obviously the object must appear to you. So, okay, there's no issue, there's no debate about this. Our main issue is whether this type of awareness, the direct perception, sense direct perception apprehending blue, whether it ascertains the object or not. The object appears, but is it ascertained or not? So those who bring up this debate, they actually bring along a quotation and they say, yes, because there is a quotation that says, whatever is direct perception does not ascertain anything, does not ascertain its object. Why? Because they say it is non-conceptual mind, because it is direct perception, and direct perception, according to this quotation, does not ascertain. So you can have the ear direct perception apprehending sound, eye awareness apprehending form or color, and so forth. All of those direct perceptions, the sense direct perceptions or whatever, we would have, if you accept this quotation, you will have to say that none of them actually ascertains their object. So if you accept this quotation, if in your system you accept this quotation, then every type of direct perception would have to be a type of awareness to which the object appears, but is not ascertained. So really, we have to deal with this quotation and with this debate. Okay, so really, we have to deal with this quotation and we have to understand what this quotation is saying. Indeed, it's a valid quotation. We have it in our texts, and therefore, we should be able to deal with this. So this quotation says that everything that is direct perception does not ascertain. It does not ascertain any aspect, does not ascertain its object. However, we know that we have other quotations that says the great intelligent one ascertains all aspects. So this one is actually referring to the yogic direct perception. In terms of direct perception, we know that we have different types of direct perception. We have the sense, the mental, we have the yogic, the self-knower, and then we have the yogic direct perception. The yogic direct perception exists in the continuum of an area. And this is described in this second quotation now that we want to give, that says the great intelligent one is the yogic direct perception, ascertains all aspects. So obviously here we have two quotations that seems to be saying different things. So the first one says that any type of direct perception does not ascertain anything. The second says, hold on a minute, it cannot apply to everything because we know yogic direct perception ascertains everything. Okay, so how do we, and we have to go back and we have to explain, we have to analyze the first quotation, the difficult one, the one that causes the difficulty. So when it says direct perception does not ascertain, what it means there is that direct perception, because it is direct, is a type of awareness that is free from conceptuality. It's a non-conceptual mind, and therefore it will not ascertain anything the way that a conceptual mind ascertains. The conceptual mind has different ways of thinking and analyzing and finds certainty. So it says here, direct perception will not find the certainty that a conceptual mind will find. Why? Because it's non-conceptual. Okay. So it cannot mean that there is no type of direct perception that ascertains things. We know we have yogic direct perception. We know that we have omniscience. They are direct perceptions. Definitely they ascertain. All right, we're going into the next one, doubting consciousness, page 106. Okay, so we're on page 106. We're looking at the definition of doubting consciousness. All right, so we'll read this one, and Geshe was looking at a more abbreviated, anyway, we will talk about it. Anyway, so the definition of a doubting consciousness is a knower which by its own power has qualms in two directions. Okay, so in some ways we don't need to posit a definition to explain what is doubting consciousness. We have a lot of doubts ourselves. We doubt this, we doubt that. What is the meaning? I doubt what I doubt. What did he say? What did he mean by that? And so on and so forth, right? Okay, there is the main part of the definition here is that it's a type of awareness, consciousness that has qualms in two directions. It is not certain. It is really doubting. Okay, we need to make the distinction here between doubt, that is a mental factor, and doubting consciousness, that is the main mind, which has doubt as part of its, in its retinue, as a mental factor. Okay, so you cannot just say it is a doubting mind, because doubting mind refers to the mental factor of doubt. Okay, so we need to make the difference between mind and mental factor here. Okay, so it's not the mental factor of doubt, but if you have the mental factor of doubt in your retinue, since the main mind and the mental factor have the same aspect, the same focal object, they are compatible in 5 ways, right? If you have doubt in your retinue, you become doubting awareness. Okay, some say, okay, if this type of definition brings about the short definition, right? The type of awareness that has qualms with regards to its own object, If that brings about confusion between main mind and mental factor, perhaps we can alter a little bit the definition, and we can say that it refers to the type of awareness that it is. It's the mental factor that has qualms with respect to its own object, because it says if you directly mention mental factor, it means you are eliminating the possibility of it being the main mind. However, we know that we have concordant mental factors, and together with doubt, for example, you can have feeling in the retinue of that mind. However, feeling is a different thing from doubt. Okay, and if you just say it like this, something that has the mental factor that has qualms with respect to its own object, it could be referring to the feeling instead of this mental factor of doubt that you want to indicate. So you can see that once you start shortening the definition or giving, posing different things of definition, it doesn't actually work. No, so let's look at the genuine definition in our system. So we want to see what is the definition of really the mental factor of doubt. So doubting consciousness on page 106. The definition of doubting consciousness is the knower by its own power has qualms in two directions. So this expression, by its own power, so this really narrows it down to the mental factor of doubt. The mental factor of doubt, by its own power, is doubting. Whilst the main mind, it becomes a doubting mind because it has the mental factor in its retinue. It is through the power of the mental factor that the main mind becomes doubting. However, the mental factor of doubt is doubting through its own power. So that really narrows it down. And it also excludes the mental factor of feeling. Why? Because feeling also in that retinue will have the feeling of doubt, but it's not through its own power. It has this because it is coexisting with the mental factor of doubt. But the mental factor of doubt is the one who does it, all the doubting through its own power. So Geshe was saying, I think really that this phrase, by its own power, is the thing that nails the definition. This is the thing that narrows it down to the mental factor. For example, you could have this definition and omit this phrase, right? You could talk about consciousness, which is a knower that has qualm in two directions. If you just say it has qualm in two directions, it doesn't necessarily mean you do it through your own power. It means you are in the company of someone who is doubting, and you are influenced by that doubt, isn't it? Okay, so this is a very important part in the definition. Next page, 108, it says, when doubting consciousness are divided, there are three: tending towards the fact, not tending towards the fact, and both equally. So doubt tending towards the fact. So let's say I'm contemplating here whether or not sound is impermanent. I am not sure, but I would say most probably it's impermanent. So it is true that sound is impermanent, and although I'm not sure about it, I'm tending, I'm aiming, I'm going towards the right direction. The next one is not tending towards the fact. So I'm saying, I'm not sure, I'm going to say sound is permanent. So now I'm going away from the fact. Okay. The third one, both equally, is like I'm in the middle, I'm in the center, I can't make up my mind. Is it permanent? Is it impermanent? I really can't tell. Another classification of doubting awareness that we can give is afflicted doubt and non-afflicted doubt. So afflicted doubt is doubt that you can have, like, do the three jewels exist or not? Does liberation exist or not? Does omniscience exist or not? Does the law of cause and effect exist or not? Now, when you have these types of doubts actually impede you. They create obstacles for your practice. For example, if you're doubting whether or not liberation exists, it means you're not ready to enter the path and progress wholeheartedly on the path. If you're doubting that this destination exists, you're not going to enter this path, isn't it? So afflicted doubt is doubt that becomes an obstacle for you to progress on the path. There is other type of doubt that is not afflicted doubt. For example, is there a pig in the field over there? Or what I see back in the distance, is this a human or not? Is this a stone or is it fossilized? I don't know, is it a fossil or is it wood or something like this? Okay, this type of doubt is not really knowledge obscuration, and it's not really obscuring you. It's not creating obstacles for your path to progress along the path, okay? Although it's not strictly classified as a knowledge obscuration, nevertheless, it is, you know, we put it in the category, in that general category, because it is doubt, and you know, it creates a bit of, you know, hesitation within you. Okay, so we are coming to the last one, the seventh of these types of mind and awareness, which is wrong consciousness. The page 109, the definition of wrong consciousness is a knower which is mistaken with regard to its object of engagement. If it says object of operation, it should say object of engagement there. Okay, so when they are classified at the bottom of the page, when wrong consciousness are divided, there are two: conceptual and non-conceptual. Illustrations of conceptual wrong consciousness are a thought consciousness apprehending the horse of a rabbit and a consciousness apprehending a self of a person. So you could say, thinking that sound is permanent, or thinking that the person has a self, or phenomena have a self, or apprehending, what did we say here, the horns of a rabbit, and so forth. So this is conceptual, and there are two types of non-conceptual wrong awareness, sense and mental. Wrong sense consciousness are, for example, a sense consciousness seeing two moons, or the sense consciousness to which a snow mountain appears blue, or sense consciousness to which apprehends a circle when you have, let's say, an incense or a piece of dry grass that is on fire and you swirl it around, and so forth. So the thing with wrong awareness is that it is mistaken. If it is wrong, it necessarily is mistaken. There is perversion here. Okay, you can see it in the definition that the wrong awareness is a knower which is mistaken. Okay, so we see that the last part of the definition says, you know, it is mistaken with regard to its object of engagement, or maybe you want to say object of operation, but actually the Tibetan says object of engagement. We say that in terms of wrong awareness, we have two. One type is conceptual wrong awareness. So if it is conceptual wrong awareness, its specific object is called the determined object. Okay, so if you say it is mistaken with regard to its determined object, it means you are talking about conceptual wrong awareness. If you're talking about non-conceptual wrong awareness, you would say it is mistaken with regard to its non-existing object that clearly appears. So this is non-conceptual wrong awareness. Okay, so when we talk about wrong awareness, we say that wrong awareness is mistaken with respect to its object. If it is a case of conceptual wrong awareness, how is it mistake? Why is the mistake occurring? It is occurring usually due to ideology, due to position, isn't it? So it is something which is acquired due to certain views. It is an indirect, you could say, effect that brings about the mistake. When we have non-conceptual wrong awareness, there are many ways that the mistake can occur. So we have given here different examples. When we say you have wrong awareness because there is one moon, but you're seeing it as two, here you are mistaken. The mistake is in terms of the number. If you have different type of mistaken awareness that occurs when, for example, the car is moving, and because the car is moving, it seems like the trees on the side of the street are moving. This is a different type of mistake. It's not mistake due to the number. It is mistake due to the relative location. If you have, for example, wrong awareness that perceives blue snow, right? Because something is wrong with your eyesight, you're mistaken in terms of the color. If you make the mistake that during the night you see the sun or you see too much light, it can happen. Maybe it's a dream. You are mistaken in terms of the time. It is night, but for you it is as if it is day. When, for example, you are really exhausted and depressed, and you have to go up the hill, and to you this looks like a big mountain, you are mistaken in terms of the shape or the size and so forth. So you see, in non-conceptual wrong awareness, the mistake can come from different ways, like time, or size, or numbers, or location, or something's wrong with your eyes, and so on and so forth, okay? If it is conceptual, it comes through, what did we say? Through drupta, through ideology. Yes. All right. So remember here with the conceptual wrong awareness, it comes through ideology and it comes through imprints. So, it is coming in this particular way. Okay. So why do we include wrong awareness in this presentation? It is very important because we stress that we need to have correct, we need to have non-mistaken, we need to have not wrong awareness, okay? We need to have the opposite of this, and we need to understand that there are many types of wrong awareness. The mistake can come from many directions. Okay, so that was the main presentation of the 7 types of mind of awareness. We will stop here for tonight. Thank you, everyone, and good evening, and I hope everyone is fine and well. We just went a few minutes over. I hope, please do not be upset with this.